Hey, Lynz, what are you listening to?
Brian, you share yours and I'll share mine.
With millions of podcasts, how do you choose?
We are here to help you find that next bingeable podcast.
Or that piece of content you'll follow regularly.
You're listening to Feed Drops. All right, everybody, welcome to Feed Drops. We are here at the Sitch Radio Studios in Irvine, California. My name is Lynz Florin, and I'm here with my co-host, Brian Colburn.
That would be me. We are excited to welcome you to another episode. Last week, we had two great shows on. I don't want to spoil it. Do you want to spoil it, Lynz?
Nah, we don't need to do that.
You know, if you missed last week's episode, go back and check it out. And let me remind you, or maybe the new listener, of how this works. On Mondays, you get Lynz and I discussing two different podcasts every single week.
Absolutely. We come together and we each bring a show that was either submitted from the shows that were submitted to us or something that we found that we really wanted to bring to the show. And then we get to talk about these two shows, whether or not they relate. We'll find something in common with them probably, but generally it's just two shows, some quotes from them, and our impressions, of course, too. And then later that same week, we will be releasing full episode feed drops in our feed so that you can get a deeper dive if you want to.
Yeah, and the way we choose which show drops Wednesday versus Thursday, and I want to remind everybody, this isn't a competition head-to-head show versus show. This is how well can Brian pick an episode versus Lynz.
Yeah, we're playing, it's like an engagement party, basically, and not like the kind you might be thinking of for a wedding engagement, but it's like social media and web engagement. And basically, we wanted to find some kind of gaming mechanism so that there would be a fun reason to pick, one episode goes out Thursday versus Wednesday. And there's a little bit of chance that comes into what order these things are going to come down the pipeline. And we hope that makes it more fun to find and discover new shows. It certainly has been making it more fun for us to listen to new shows. And we've had a lot of submissions from the Twitter account we've started. And so it's been wild to see who has submitted and listen a little bit and see if it fits the show and what we're doing.
And just to dispel how people submit shows, we love you sharing your feed on Twitter. Thank you. You're going to get a reply from either Lynz or myself saying, we really need you to go to feeddrops.com, submit your show there because we ask some other questions. And that way you're into the report that we dump weekly to evaluate shows. And Feed Drops, this is kind of the way we get to stand on a megaphone and keep it real.
If you've been tuning along the whole time, that joke should make you laugh. And for those that it's new, you can go back and find out why that's funny. But mostly, one of the things we really like is it's a chance for the two of us. We both own podcasting businesses. It's a chance for us to meet our minds together and learn from each other, learn from the shows that we're discussing, and try to become better podcasters and better business people ourselves.
It's amazing how much I've learned just by listening to shows I normally wouldn't have listened to. And then again, working with you, Lynz, you're an inspiration. I appreciate our friendship and you're the man.
Yeah, I feel like we're starting from a high water mark. We'll see where it goes from here, but mostly we're having fun, enjoying the time we get to spend together, and we're making a better show each week too. So that's fun.
So, Lynz, I need you to be bold and begin.
That is what we call a master segue. So that introduces the show that I brought to the table this week. I solicited it from a friend of mine, Christina Barcy, who is another business owner, has a production business as well. And she has a podcast called Be Bold Begin, where she speaks to entrepreneurs and to people who are, maybe they've figured out how to get started so that their insights might help you get over some of your struggles if you're trying to get started with a creative project or a business.
Yeah, and I'm bringing to the table Higher Power Radio, and it's not a religious show. I thought it first was when I was talking to them. However, it's a show about hiring people, employees, etc. And it's hosted by a guy named Rick Gerard. He does visit me here at the studio weekly, and I have learned a lot about how to hire properly. And having the knowledge is one thing, putting it into practice is another. Knowledge is the first step. So that's what I'm bringing to the plate today.
I think this episode, we didn't really plan it, but if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a business owner, I think at any level, both of these shows are going to help you with some early stage work in getting things going. I'm excited to dig deeper into these shows, and we're going to do that right after we take a quick break.
Thanks for listening to those supporting this show. And we're going to dive right into clip number 1 of Be Bold, Begin.
I just could identify with these adolescents who were lost. I wasn't that much older than them when I started working with them, but I had a pretty checkered childhood and adolescence. So, when we talk about intuition, it's hard to explain why I did things. It was just these gut feelings, and then it was the passion that kept me there. But the children and adolescents, the art and the art therapy was healing to them.
All right. So this brings us in. The guest on Be Bold Begin is an experienced coach and as someone who's created their own coaching frameworks, something that the host of the show, Christina Barcy, is personally interested in. So this conversation is a conversation between two women who are both in the business of trying to help people get unstuck and help them get clear on what they're doing. This first clip is the guest kind of sharing some of her perspective there. And so what spoke to you about this clip, Brian?
The underlying sentiment of just do it, just act. I have a group of friends and we meet virtually every Wednesday. We're not local to each other. And it's designed to motivate each other. And some of the participants are always looking for that next gadget. If they learned a little more, if they took this course, they would then feel comfortable to get started. We call that imposter syndrome. And just start acting. I think we get to a point to where we have enough knowledge to begin, but we're not comfortable beginning, but you're going to learn more faster and already have begun once you begin.
Yeah. I think the analogy I like to bring is that you cannot turn a car unless it is in motion. You can turn the wheel all you like, but if it is stuck in park, you won't go anywhere. And I think we are the same way, which is that if you want to make a course correction, you better be moving. You could turn your head, but your trajectory doesn't change.
That's right.
So this one definitely spoke to me and it felt resonant.
And it's cool. She kind of identified with where she should start.
I think the next clip also gets into perspective a little bit, which I think is something you talked about a bit.
Here we go.
Creativity is one of the most important relationships we can have with ourselves because it's all about what we say to ourselves. We can either say, I'm not good enough, or I'm not good enough yet, or who cares whether I think I'm good enough? I'm going to do this anyway. Let's just try this.
Yeah, I love the possibility, and I think she talks about it in other times in the interview, the concept of reframing. I think we assume a truth about our lives that is presented to us, and people may not realize on their own, and they might have to figure out, is that we have the power in our own minds to tell ourselves a new story that will make us see it a different way and find a new way of doing it also. And the stories we tell ourselves, I think, can either help us be inspired or help us cower in fear. And so to that end, I know my brain is susceptible to that kind of influence, right? And so I preload it with as many positive stories. I understand I am intentionally deceiving myself, but the world provides all the negative my brain needs. I need the counter. And so I preload that with the bias to try and tell myself stories that are going to uplift me and the people around me. Because again, I think the world does plenty to knock us down all on our own.
And there's a difference between being thoughtful and creative. I can go, wow, I can paint the prettiest picture. That's a thought. Until you put paint to canvas, you're not being creative. You're just being thoughtful. And putting this in a business aspect, if you have a goal to achieve X, but that's not written down and there aren't benchmarks and there aren't milestones, it's not a goal, it's a dream. You have to act on these thoughts. And it's amazing. I've never considered myself a creative person. We discussed in earlier episodes, I played musical instruments, etc., but I never considered myself a musician. And I think if I sit back and evaluate the work that I've done, I'm becoming more creative. I'm taking that thought and putting it into action and experimenting with different sounds, tones, pitches, etc. And finally, I feel like I'm creative.
Yeah, I think there's something that happens when you're prepared and inspired kind of in the same breath, because you can be prepared but bored, and that won't really lead to creativity. But if you're prepared and inspired, you know what to do with the excitement you have. And I think if you go too far in one direction of over preparation versus being inspired, or you're over inspired but you don't do any preparation, that's the direction I come from as a musician and a creative. I generate a million ideas, and I have learned as an adult how to follow through on them so that any of them could happen, and it took me a long time of realizing that wanting something to be and doing it is a daily thing. You have to kind of re-engage on. The bigger the dream, the more days in a row you have to put together the small bits.
Yeah. And just that all ties it together. You've got to act. You've got to begin.
Yeah. I think this show is really great. I know Christina is a very encouraging and inspiring person, and this is her personal vehicle. She also edits and produces other shows for other people, but this is where she gets to shine and do some of her most exciting work. So I would say definitely stick around from the feed for later in this week to hear a full episode of these two women inspiring each other.
Yeah, I'm anticipating having the opportunity to listen to it again because it was inspiring.
Yeah. So we're going to take another quick break and we'll be back with the next show.
Thanks again for listening. And we are going to go straight into this next clip.
This is where your biggest time investment needs to be made, is in this discovery call. So even if I get 100 resumes to come in, myself, maybe one of my other people, an admin, are going to go through, we're going to crank through and do the discovery calls on all 100 people. Because what I found is the people that you would screen out based on their resume are often the people who are best positioned for your organization. They just don't have time to write a resume, or do they have the desire to write the resume?
So to set this up a little bit, I'm sure everyone listening has at least applied for a job, been interviewed for a job. And this is taking it past the resume phase. And I want to reinforce what he says. If somebody submits a resume, talk to them, get them on a phone for a discovery call. Everybody puts so much time and effort and thought in. I shouldn't say everybody. I always put so much time, effort, and thought into my resumes that I put out. But now that I'm receiving resumes and evaluating people, I understand that this is the painting that they want me to see, not necessarily the true entity. So getting them on the phone and having a conversation with them, I might be able to go, wow, they really understated this in their resume. They would be a great fit. Or, wow, they really overstated things in their resume. I need to move on. But that's what this clip was about. Lynz, what did you pull from it?
I think, to me, that the key to most business operations is sort of saving yourself a future headache or two. And the prospect of having a discovery call and looking past like you said, it's the painting they want. It's in the parlance of social media, they've got the Instagram filters all over their resume. The resume is pristine. It's perfect. It's exactly what you want to see. But that doesn't tell you how they work. Probably, and I've always struggled to create resumes that reflect how I work because it doesn't feel like a document that can communicate that properly. And in that respect, it's true. It isn't. It's a two-dimensional model of a three-dimensional person. As a business person, if you can have conversations, you're going to learn a lot more about that person. Even if they've had a chance to rehearse, it's still, you have a chance to kind of have a discussion.
Agreed. So let's roll into clip number 2.
You can conduct a good interview, but the download piece that happens is usually hey, what do you think? Did you like him or not like him? And if it's yeah, I liked him and we should hire him, there's never a why. You need to make it a rule that there's no evidence, you don't get a vote. So you have to have conversations that extract evidence to vote either way, yes or no. And when you have these clearly to find questions. There's no reason why people can't extract the evidence that really bring forth the evidence to support a decision either way.
And this segment really resonated with me because I've said before, wow, I just got a good gut feeling about that person. And I've been wrong. And looking at it through his eyes, saying, what evidence did I take away from this discovery call, from reviewing this resume, from maybe an in-person interview to support my gut feeling? That's what's important.
This is something I've heard a lot of times from business owners and managers. I used to work in retail. They said it's really easy to hire somebody. It's really hard to get rid of them. And so the mistake has a long shadow. And if you miss it on that, and I'll use this moment to tell a quick story. So my first big job out of college, I worked for Radio Shack, and I was hired as a seasonal employee, in one of the stores. I lived in Michigan at the time. And I, over the course of the next several months, kind of got into the manager program and started training and eventually got my own store. And so what I loved about Radio Shack was that they gave me a model to learn, that it fits their business. They've got this they had this headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas, where they did a lot of thinking and everything. And now they're, of course, out of business. But one of the things that they did was they forced us, all managers, to participate in hiring fairs for the whole region. And I got to be where I was the hiring manager for my store and 3 other stores on the coast of Michigan. And having to interview people, not for my store, but to place them in other places, and having to go through all those interviews, my boss, the district manager, I had to make a case for anybody I wanted to bring on board. And so I maybe didn't realize until we pulled this quote, how I just know how to do that. That experience gave me the experience of saying, oh, I need to make a case. If I want to bring somebody on board, we can't just fill a seat. We have to fill it with somebody who will do something with it. And if I fought for somebody to become hired and they did badly, I got dragged through the coals at every manager meeting, and so there were some stakes in the game. And at the time, I really did not like much about this job, but I find it prepared me for so much about running a business because of the way it trained me.
Yeah, and if you're in a position where you do a lot of interviewing, hiring, have a say in who's hired, etc., this is a show I would encourage you to listen to. I've learned so much that it's almost an industry of people getting into companies with no intent on doing the work, looking for a settlement on the way out. I have learned that you should not record video or audio of what's going on in an interview. You shouldn't keep copious amounts of notes or awkward shorthand, because if things get in front of a judge and jury, how are they going to be interpreted? It's amazing that people think like that. I never have. I look for a job, I find a job, I work the job to the best of my ability. There are some unscrupulous people out there, and I guess bad things are happening that I'm unaware of. So I listen to the show.
Yeah. Business ownership, there's a lot of sealing holes in a ship. I could take that metaphor to the ocean, and it's like a giant ship with a bunch of holes that you're just constantly filling.
Yep.
And there are people who are trying to drill more holes. I wish that wasn't the case as a business owner, but there are people who file false insurance claims against you. I mean, there are just so many ways that people can. And so it's nice for a show like this that seals a certain number of those holes for you.
That it is. Well, that does it for this episode. After you listen to this, head on over to feeddrops.com, find this episode. It'll be prominent on the homepage, and leave us a comment as to whether your choice is Be Bold Begin or Higher Power Radio.
Absolutely. And please comment and connect on our social media. We're definitely having the same kind of engagement play and trying to get people to share which episode speaks to them more. If they both spoke to you, hey, 2 winners, we're on board. Mostly, we're just trying to make sure that you can find new shows that resonate with you and I think we've done that today. What about you, Brian?
You know, I do. One of my goals with this show is to celebrate podcasting. And I think we're doing that because I'm listening to shows I normally probably wouldn't have found, wouldn't have listened to if I did see it. And that's my bad. That's the way I scroll through podcast players when I'm looking for something to consume. And I'm fortunate to have this opportunity to sit and listen to shows and keep the submissions coming. People are going to feeddrops.com. They are submitting their podcast. We're running a report weekly. We're reviewing. I reviewed all 10 submissions last week. And we've got, last I looked, another 8 already this week, and it's Wednesday.
So even in the smallest, simplest terms for podcasters, if you just want 2 more downloads on your show, submitting to us will get us both to at least listen to it. So bare minimum, you get 2 more clicks. And very likely we're going to find something we love about it and share it in a future episode.
Definitely. Now, right now, we're averaging 10 submissions a week. We're only highlighting 2 a week. So don't get frustrated if you have submitted. We might circle back and or send you an email saying, thanks. Unfortunately, we don't see you in the future lineup. We will communicate that with you. Don't hate us for it. There's only 1 episode a week of introducing 2 new shows.
Yeah. And feel free to reach out to us and contact with us. Tell us what you liked about the show. Constructive criticism is it's welcome. We want to improve it, but mostly we just want to make sure that you're getting something out of it. So let us know if that's the case. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
All righty. Hit us up on IG and Twitter.